This is Survival Stuff with Indiana Jim. I'm James C. Jones. I'm the author of quite a few books on survival. I do live in Indiana, but Indiana Jones was already taken, so I'll be Indiana Jim. At any rate, we're going to talk a little bit today about how we react to stress. But first I want to tell you where we're coming from and who we are. I'm the founder of Live for USA. I'm the author of Advanced Survival with Skyhorse Publishing, Total Survival, 150 Survival Secrets, the Ultimate Book of Survival Gear, and coming up soon, the Prepper's First Aid Manual. So look for those books at Skyhorse Publishing. Go to Live for USA's website, which is at americansurvivor.org. That's americansurvivor.org. You can also email me if you have questions at survivorjj@aol.com. Yep, I'm on the old-fashioned AOL. Our organization's slogan and belief is that self-reliant families are the foundation of a free and safe society. We've been doing this since 1968, way before the word survivalist or prepper was even out there. I like to think of myself as a self-reliance advocate and practitioner. Okay? Like I said, we're a nonprofit, tax-deductible organization. Our only income is really from membership dues and from contributors, but we'd love to have some sponsors. That'd be great. We'd like to have some bigger contributors. We could do some great things if we really had adequate funds. Our motto, by the way, is preparedness, self-reliance, and responsibility. And responsibility is a big part of what we do. So we're not doomsday survivalists. We're not underground, hide in the woods or hunker in the bunker survivalists. We're public. We get out there, work with the public. We believe a stronger community makes us all safer, and is the best survival plan is to help your community become more prepared and be part of your community. I'm a survivalist to a lot of people, and yet I have community service awards on my wall. So that's the kind of people we like to have in our organization as well. Membership online is just $20 or $50 for 3 years. We could also actually snail mail you the newsletter every 2 months, or if you join online, you can actually download the newsletter, and you can download as they come out, and you can download 70-some plus back issues. We've been around doing this since the 60s. Not all of them, not all the issues are available online anymore because original issues were done by mimeograph, okay? But all the ones that have been electronically produced, you can download off of the website. So enough about that. What I want to talk about today with you is sort of what I do, the preliminary to my 10 principles of survival. I usually, when I do a lecture, I start out with how we handle stress under emergency conditions, under high stress conditions. I've done the 10 principles of survival. There's 1 through 5 is one video, 5 through 10 is the second video. I advise you to go to those. This is sort of the preliminary, builds you up to that. I'm a behavioralist. I study behavior, how humans behave under stress, how they behave in a disaster situation or a survival situation. What makes the difference between somebody who survives and somebody who dies under the same situation is usually what went on up here. So I spend a lot of time in covering those, and I cover them in my books, especially in these two, and I cover them in my lectures, and I'm going to go over some of that with you today. So, first of all, we needed to define disasters. We hear a lot of we use the term disaster all the time, and we hear it applied to things that aren't really disasters. Basically, it's any event or condition or trend that results in an immediate or eventual, again, we have long-term, short-term, trend that's a threat to your life and your liberty and your property. Life, liberty, and property. Where have I heard that before? We have live free, right? Live and free. So we cover how to rub two sticks together, but we cover how to stay free. So there's two classes of disaster, and I get this from the fact that I'm an emergency medical technician. We have injuries or illnesses are acute or chronic. Acute disasters, tornadoes, floods, pandemics, wars, civil disorder, criminal assaults, all those kind of things that happen to you immediately. Boom. Those are acute disasters. And they happen very quickly, and you have to react to them in a certain way. Behavioral, mental survival. And then there's chronic disasters. And pandemic was sort of in between that. It happened sort of quick, but it's going on and on. And by the way, we have to anticipate that other pandemics will come, and pandemics of different types will be kind of normal. The new normal is a state of constant threats, of constant bad things happening. Unfortunately, I hate to tell you that. I could be very popular coming on and telling everybody that everything was wonderful and things were going to get better and back to whatever normal hell was in the first place. Unfortunately, my job is to tell you that things aren't going to be all at normal. We're going to do another thing called the Survival Matrix, which we do every couple of years, and we also put it in the newsletter. But right now we're going to talk about mental survival. So we have acute and chronic disasters that are happening. Like the chronic is the economy going down the tubes. China, a predatory, aggressive, oppressive communist regime, is becoming the world power. That's a chronic disaster for Americans and for most of the world. Declines and shortages of supplies due to overpopulation and all the other kinds of things, that's chronic. Severe weather. All of these kind of things are chronic disasters that are happening to all of us right now. When we started the Free USA back in the 60s, everything was fine except the nuclear threat. Other than that, everything was kind of fine. Now we have multiple threats, and a lot of them are happening to us all the time. So we have to be prepared for those. So acute disasters, we have power shortages, civil unrest, crime, storms, and epidemics. We saw those kind of things. These are happening to us right now. So what does this all mean? We got chronic disasters happening all the time, and then we have within those, we have acute disasters like more storms and forest fires and civil disorder and pandemics and all that happening to us simultaneously. And there's a ripple effect, if you will, a domino effect that when one thing happens, we saw another thing and another thing, the economy and civil unrest and all these other things happening because of one thing. So everything's a house of cards at this point. I did a lecture 5 years ago. I did a lecture called Civilian awareness. Awareness, by the way, is my second rule of survival, principle of survival. And I went through all the likelihoods of these things, and pandemic was one of the big ones. Okay, I also covered civil unrest, potential revolution, all these kind of things. And everybody's looking at me like, "Wow, what is?" But most of those things are happening, or have already happened, and are happening again. But at the end of it, I said, what does all this mean? Well, we are all firmly attached to an inclined plane wrapped helically around a central core. In other words, we're kind of screwed. Okay? I like that description of being screwed. We are kind of screwed, but we're going to have to deal with it. And one of the other things in my 10 principles, which you definitely need to look at those videos and go online, you can also get them at our website, is take control. So you have to own this. You have to take control of these situations. There aren't always any good solutions. There's just a number of choices, and you have to make the best one you can. So how do we react to danger? I mean, if I smell smoke right now, or I hear gunshots outside my house, or whatever, how do we react? The first reaction we always have, and it's human, is denial. Okay, we look at the pandemic. Denial, and politicians, by the way, are in business to tell you what you want to hear. They're not in business to tell you what you don't want to hear. So they're always going to tell you what you want to hear, and you're always going to believe what you want to believe. And when you smell smoke, you're not going to want to believe that your house is on fire. You want to believe that something's on the stove, or your smoke alarm is defective, or whatever. If you hear shots, I hear it all the time. I thought it was a backfire. The first place you go isn't a disaster. It's something less than that. It's got to be another. A normal. What do we say? Oh, this cannot be happening. You got to be friggin' kidding me. Oh no, those are denial statements, okay? People who follow my 10 principles, which, like I said, one of them is anticipate, another one is be aware, another one is be here, be there now. People who do those things get from denial to deliberation quickly. Deliberation is that step where you say, what should I do? What can I do? What are my options? And options come from being survival knowledgeable, survival trained, survival prepared. That's choices. There's another word for choices is called freedom. So you want to have freedom. When the pandemic hit, those of us who were prepared, we didn't have to pay attention to what the government said. We didn't have to be defiant. We didn't have to be compliant. We just had to be self-reliant, okay? So we reacted in that way, those of us that were prepared and survivalists or preppers or whatever you want to call yourself. We got from denial to deliberation very quickly. We had choices. We were able to make a decision, which is the third reaction, and then finally to actions. The faster you got from deliberation to action, the better. People who mentally just don't accept that anything bad can happen, and unfortunately we have a society now that has been mollycoddled and soft and protected for so long that they can't conceive that something would go wrong. I like to think that the pandemic knocked them out of that state of mind, that they now accept that the society and civilization is not all that stable and that safe, and they need to take some responsibility, I hope. But nevertheless, that's how there's stories, and I read study these stories about what happened in these disasters. There were stories where people went to a wedding, they're sitting at the table, and the flames are starting to go up the curtains and stuff, and they're sitting there saying, well, this can't be happening, and they sat there for a minute thinking somebody's going to come and put the fire out or whatever. And as a result, their bodies were still found sitting at the table in the restaurant that burned down, because within seconds, fire doubles every minute or so. Within seconds, they were overcome by smoke. If they had reacted right away, like most of the people did, they'd have got out of there. But there was a handful of people who didn't react fast enough. You'll see people when an active shooter starts, and what do? They freeze and what's going on? What's going on? And then they start to run when they probably should just hit the ground. They didn't have a pre-plan. They took too long to get from denial to action. So this is how we react. We go into denial. The faster we can get out of denial, the better. Are you a high-grade personality? If you are, like me, you'll get there a lot faster. If you've been, I ask at my lectures, have any of you been through in a building that was on fire? Then I hold up my hand for that. Okay. Have any of you been through a major earthquake? I can hold up my hand for that. Okay. Have you ever been through a major tornado? I can hold up my hand for that. Okay. But a lot of people hold up their hand. I have had a very hard childhood. A lot of stress. My life was very stressful, especially the first 20 years. My high school years and grammar school years were horrible. Lots of stress. I lived on the south side of Chicago, where there was a lot of crime, a lot of violence, stress. So this is why the military puts you through stress. They put you through those horrible conditions. They want to get you to become what they call a high-grade personality. You're used to stress. You handle stress. You don't freak out under stress. So if you start to assume that bad things can happen, and you start to anticipate things, that gives you a definite advantage. So what happens in a disaster? What kind of things happen once that disaster hits? Well, people tend to play the roles they play in real life. Leaders tend to lead people out. Okay. People who are nurses and doctors tend to go into that mode. People who are used to following or used to not knowing what the heck they're doing tend to do exactly that under disaster situations. That's why survival training is so important for those people. People look for instructions and follow a chain of command. If there's a chain of command, you're on a plane, the chain of command is that the flight attendant is in charge, okay? And they found out that under stress, these people are all chaotic in the plane. Flight attendants can no longer be, please sit down, please get up and don't take your luggage. No, it's ordering. What do we call it? Take control. When those flight attendants are trained now to give orders, not just suggestions. Somebody takes control. Sometimes that's got to be you. Okay. Threats unite people. I'm not so sure of that one after COVID-19, after the pandemic. The politicians and the panic peddlers used it to divide people, and that's a shame. But threats really should unite people, and I think with an organization like Live Free USA and some of the training that we do, and we talk about going to your neighbors, talking to your neighbors about things, and being open about being prepared and helping other people. That's what we need to do so that when these things happen, we're not blaming each other or fighting with each other. You can't really survive alone for any length of time. How does the body react to stress? How do you react internally? Blood chemistry changes considerably. Blood clotting agents are multiplied in case you have to bleed. Pain relievers and stimulants are released under stress so that we see people that were shot or stabbed or hurt or wounded, and they keep going, especially, unfortunately, these people that are on drugs. You see the cops, oh, look, there's 5 cops beating up on that poor little guy. Well, that guy is winning because not only does he have all these pain relievers, but he also has these drugs, but also these natural pain relievers, and he's actually able to handle 4 or 5 big guys to get them under control. And cops would go through this all the time. And it looks terrible on the video, but in reality, as an EMT, we saw a lot of these where, this guy was throwing, 250-pound cops off him like nothing, and he was wounded. And they zapped him with a taser 3 times, had no effect at all. A lot of us under stress will react the same kind of way. Non-vital functions are suspended, okay? That means that your bowels and your kidneys and everything, that just stop working, your stomach stops digesting, so you may throw up, you may defecate, you may urinate. About 1/3 of all soldiers, when the first time they're in combat, defecate. The term "scared the poop out of you" is very accurate. So those things can happen, and you have to ignore them. One of our rules is do what you have to do, and that's the let's see, what is it? The 9th rule of survival: do what you have to do. Unfortunately, if that's what happens, you still got to keep going and do the survival stuff. It can be very embarrassing. But anyhow, heat, heart and breathing rates increase considerably. That's why, it's a little worse for people that are older or have heart conditions. Memory may go blank. If you don't train, if you don't practice your first aid and your self-defense and all your other survival skills, you don't practice them physically, and you only read about them, your mind is likely to go blank when as the French say, the mirror hits the circuit est here. Okay, I want to use the English translation for that. But when that happens, your mind's liable to go blank. Just forget everything you read in a book, unless you practice them. And you hear people, even soldiers, say, yes, I didn't know what to do, but the training took over. The minute I started doing it, and I'm the same way, I'm an EMT, and if you ask me the steps in CPR or blood stopping or whatever, when the person's laying there and you ask me to go over them mentally, I couldn't do it. But as soon as I start going, boom, 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 I know what I'm doing. I do what I have to do. So training is very important for critical survival skills, especially like first aid, self-defense, those kind of things. Breathing control. This is something I include in most of my lectures. It's called combat breathing. It's got a couple of other names. I also work with the volunteers and police service. The police use this all the time under combat situations. Of course, you can't use it instantly if you're being shot at, but as soon as you got that second to break, or you're about to go into a combat situation or a medical situation, we, like EMTs, we have to put on our gloves and our protective equipment. That gives us a second. And during those couple of seconds, we can do this exercise to calm down. So we don't have this tunnel vision. We have to have wide vision. In combat, you need to know what's going on around you, not only the one guy coming at you with a knife, but the guy over there with a gun. You need to be able to comprehend. If I don't need to just focus on this one person who's screaming bloody murder and has got, blood coming out or whatever. I need to widen out and see that guy over there who's not breathing. He isn't saying a word because he's not breathing, okay? I need to look at my whole situation. How did that guy get bloody? Well, there's a guy over here who made him bloody and he's coming at you, but so you need to widen up. And it also brings back all your knowledge. If you do the rescue breathing, or not rescue breathing, but combat breathing, which is basically to inhale slowly for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale slowly for 4 seconds, wait 4 seconds, and then inhale for 4 seconds. And you do a couple of cycles, 3 or 4 cycles, and it will widen up your view. It will bring back all that information that when your mind went blank. It will calm you down and make you more able to do the things that you really have to do at that critical moment. At-risk mental states is another thing that you need to understand when you're in a survival situation. It can be, with the epidemic, it was a long period of being at-risk mental states, okay? But you can also be at an at-risk mental state because you look out your window and see a funnel cloud coming at your house, or you walk in your kitchen and there's flames, or you come around the corner and there's a guy with a gun. You're at this at-risk mental state. Boom. Or you could be, like, for instance, I had a situation where a fella at the plant I worked in, I was a safety manager, and he had an accident. He backed his truck into another truck. And corporate wanted us to discipline him, and I said, no, we're not going to discipline him because he's the best truck driver we have. But that morning, he had put his father into a nursing home. He was at an at-risk mental state. You go through those kind of things. You put a favorite animal to sleep. You put some in nursing homes. You had a fight with your wife or your husband, whatever. You're at an at-risk mental state, and you need to know that and understand and take it easy. Think more carefully before you do things. If you're fatigued, you're wore out. As some of us have been with the COVID-19. We're frustrated. We're fearful. We may be in pain. We may be angry. And by the way, anger is a symptom of stress. Anger is a symptom when you go through that denial and getting into other things. It's one of those stages. I think a lot of people got angry, but they couldn't get angry at a virus, so they got angry at each other, or they got angry at the government, or they got angry at their neighbors, or whatever. But that's an at-risk mental state. If you're frustrated and distracted, and that was all going on during the pandemic. And this can cause negative reactions. It can cause you to lose focus. It can cause you to have accidents, as I just mentioned. It can cause you to do the wrong things at the wrong time. So you have to be aware. I was like my wife, when she put her mother in a nursing home, she came home and she was going to go shopping, and she said, because she'd seen my lectures at the factory, she worked at the same place I did. She said, I'm not going to drive for a couple of days because I know you can blow through a stop sign, your mind is just not focused. And it was a good decision. Okay, so conclusions about psychologically surviving stress. Okay, 1, getting through denial. From denial to decisions to action quickly depends on your anticipation and your attitude and your mental control. There is an I in survival. It's having I can, I will, I must, I am responsible for this situation, which is kind of goes right into my 10 principles of survival. But that's where you're at. I can do it, I will do it, I must do it. I'm responsible. I have the attitude that I can get through this, but I have to make the right decisions. Once it becomes thinkable, I think the place could burn. I think this guy might have a gun. I think this pandemic might last more than 3 months. By the way, another pandemic will probably be along in another year or 2, or 5 years at the most if we're lucky, and it might be worse. But I think that can happen, okay? Once it's thinkable, it's survivable, okay? mental preparedness is the foundation of your survival. Not all the gear in the world you've got and all the books and everything you've got won't do you any good if you're not mentally prepared. Your family and your community and your nation really need you to survive. You're the responsible people out there. You're the people that want to keep the country not only safe, but free, and keep your community stable and preserve what wonderful things we've built in this country over the years. And for that to happen, you need to survive, and you need to help your neighbors survive. So I'm not going to get into the 10 principles, but you need to see the videos on the 10 principles. It's very important, but they're also mentioned in my books. But anyhow, a couple of little slogans I can leave you with at this time. It's not what you have with you, but it's it's not what you have, but it's what you have with you that counts. So you want to have things in your pocket, things in your bedside drawer, things in your pack, things in your vehicle, stuff in those places that you need when you need it. So it's not what you have. You could have a ton of stuff, but if you don't have it with you at work, you don't have it with you in your vehicle, it may not help you at all. So it's what's in your pocket, what's in your bedside drawer, what's in your pack, what you have at work to survive with. It's not what you know, it's what you actually do that counts. Again, all the knowledge, you have to be able to apply it. Are you mentally conditioned to expect threats and challenges? Hopefully you are. So hopefully those are the things that you need to do. By the way, I had an issue of our newsletter, Pandemic of Insanity, where I go over all of the human behavioral things that could explain what happened during the pandemic, all the anger, the confusion, those kind of things where people made bad decisions and continue to make bad decisions. I covered in this issue, so if you join, you could download that issue. I think we also posted this on the website. So anyhow, hopefully you'll join Live Free USA. Hopefully you'll look at the other videos that I have posted. I've posted a bunch of them by now. Look at the 10 principles, maybe buy a few of my books from Skyhorse Publishing or Amazon. So, till the next time, this is Indiana Jim for Life and Freedom. Take care and stay safe.